Hello students. For us to be able to satisfy our users, information providers have to know their information users. So our next session is going to be information users and the provider. By the end of this session, students are expected to be able to identify the types of information users and their needs, learn the best ways of eliminating misunderstanding between the information provider and the user. You should also identify techniques for better information provision, and then you should know the role the internet plays as an information provider. Topic 1 is user services. In order to provide adequately for our information users, there are several factors that need to be considered. The factors include: you should know who the user is. What is the user's background? What is or are the information needs of the user? What is the purpose for the information need? When will the information need be available? And then what is the level of satisfaction of the user? Without the appropriate answers to these questions, we are likely not to achieve the right results. So we take them one after the other. We ask ourselves, who is the user? Answer to this question will help you to provide information to the right user. We have the one-time user. Is the user a one-time user or a frequent user? It is much easier to satisfy the frequent user in the sense that the frequent user is familiar with the environment, with the resources available, and in certain instances, you know the queries that the frequent user brings to the information center daily. So it is much easier. So the way you provide for a frequent user is different from the way you provide for one-time user. The next factor to consider is the user's background. What is the age difference? What is the intellectual background? Is that information for business or for financial gains? The age of the user will help you to satisfy the user in the sense that the way you attend to an adult user is different from the way you attend to a child. In the same vein, the way you attend to intellectual background, that's the educational background of a user, also determine how you satisfy that user. Then also, if the information is for financial gain or for business gains, there is difference between the way you treat that particular user. You also have to know the needs for these different backgrounds. Are we using the information now, or we are using it later, or it's a long-term usage? This will help us to determine the urgency. If it is now, then you know how to tackle the information. If it is for later usage, you also know how to tackle the information. And if for long-term usage, you know whether to let the person go and come later. What is the purpose? Is it for educational purpose? Is it for leisure? Is it for research? Is it for commercial? Normally, in libraries where they charge fees, when it is commercial, it helps you to determine the amount of fees to charge. The next one is need availability. The information provider must ask him or herself, is the information available now? May it be available later? Or you don't even have it? It is important to note that the information professional should attempt to search for the information nearby if you don't have it in your center. The purpose of usage. The last factor to consider is the need assessment. You have to ask yourself whether the user is satisfied, the user is yet to be satisfied, or not satisfied at all. As an information provider, it is often advisable that we ask users whether they are satisfied or not. And you can do this by suggestion boxes or a watchful attention to the user, the internet as an information provider. You will recall from the previous section on information needs that most people, especially students, tend to the internet to satisfy their information needs. Caution must be taken when using the internet to meet information needs. We are coming to look at the internet as an information provider. What is the internet? It is said that the internet is a global network of computers providing a myriad of information and communication facilities. The internet is sometimes called the net. A popular resource on the internet is the World Wide Web. It was conceived by the Advanced Research Projects Agency of the US government in 1969 and was first known as the ARPANET. The internet is used for various things. We use the internet to send messages, to send documents. It also acts as information host and allows for group discussion. We can also access computer in other locations, that's the remote computer access. Care must be taken if you are using the internet. We are saying that the non-existence of a formal organization responsible for overseeing and organizing input, output, and tools for accessing information on the internet results in unreliability of most of the information hosted on the internet. What we are saying is that if you are using the internet as a provider, you must be careful, since there are no formal organization responsible for overseeing the organization of information on the internet. The second obstacle is the gulf between those who have ready access to computers and the internet and those who do not. Now let us turn our attention to issues relating to information provider. This is important because without the information provider, the information cannot be properly organized for users to access. So our topic 3 is eliminating misunderstanding between the information provider and the information user. These are some of the ways that we as information providers, we use to eliminate misunderstanding between us and the user. We have to look at the language, the attitude, and state of mind. Language in the sense that as information providers, we need to be mindful of our choice of words. We need to look at our behavior. In certain instances, users come to us and due to our attitude, they fear to ask questions. Some of the best ways to eliminate misunderstanding are to strive for. As information provider, you have to strive for clarity, in the sense that the message should stand out and be easily understood by you as the provider and the user as well. You should also try to be simple, in the sense that you try to address the information need in a simple language. You need to be open-minded. Don't be judgmental to avoid any invalid conclusion. The information provider must not be prejudiced. He or she must show professionalism and willingness to consider new ideas. You must also put yourself in the other person's shoes. In certain instances, students or users come to the information center. Due to the urgency of the information they need, they may put out certain behaviors. But as a provider, you should be able to put yourself or empathize with the student. And that one it is one of the ways that you eliminate misunderstanding between you as a provider and the user. Then you should be open. Things that you don't know, you should be frank to tell the user that you don't know, or to ask the user to explain certain things to you. And we also say that a very important point that users feel welcomed is when you give users your full concentration. Sometimes what do we see? We see information providers doing other things when the user is talking or requesting for a need, requesting to satisfy his or her needs. There are certain techniques for practicing the concept that we've discussed above to make us good information providers. The first one is we should restate the request. Why do we restate the request? It allows us to check whether what the user is saying is the way we under. We just discussed certain things that we need to do to eliminate misunderstanding between the information provider and the user. Our next topic is we're going to look at certain techniques for practicing the concept that we just discussed. How do we do that? We first have to restate the request. The information provider must restate the user's request as a way of ensuring that he or she, that's the provider, is in the process of answering the user's query. We restate the request in order to validate the user's question and give his or her needs legitimately. We also have to be clear on the way we eliminate misunderstanding between we as information providers and the user. The first one is restating the request. In situations where the information provider is not clear of the request from the user, the provider should restate the request to check whether that is what the user wants. It also validates the user's question and give the provider a way to help the user to satisfy its information needs. The next one is when you find yourself in that situation, give the user the chance to modify his or her query or request. Again, we as information providers should avoid the use of library jargons like the OPAC or the OCLC and the ISBN, in the sense that it is not everybody who understands those terms and jargons. We should also treat others with respect. Recognizing the user as a unique individual with legitimate needs builds trust. We should also give users only what they want. In certain situations, information providers provide too much information for users and in turn confusing them. We should listen. We should listen to users. Attentive listening is a difficult skill to master. We should try to minimize our personal biases. We should give feedbacks and follow up. These are some of the techniques when we practice will bring harmony between we as information providers and the user. In summary, in this session, we learned some salient techniques that an information provider can employ to enhance communication between the information user and the information provider. You can now identify some of the ways of eliminating misunderstanding between the information seeker and the information provider. This is the activity for this section. Pick a library of your choice. Identify and categorize its users by any of the parameters discussed in this section. Discuss some of the ways in which the selected library can reduce misunderstanding between itself and its users. Thank you.